New episode, new review and analysis. Dan here to share my thoughts and feelings on the next episode of RWBY, Mountain Glen. Last week we had the girls in Oobleck arrive at the abandoned planned expansion of Vale. We had some Grimm, some Q&A with Yang, Blake and Weiss over why they wanted to be a huntress, and Oobleck giving some info on the Grimm as well as his own reasons. Day 2 now in the wasteland, so what comes next and is it good? Let's kick off and find out. We open actually back at Beacon, where Ironwood is outside for whatever reason, and Glinda comes in to see what's up. We find out that not only does Ironwood seem to have a bit of a funny arm, which I'm sure won't come into play in the future, but we see some concern for James from Glinda, which is kind of odd since so far we've seen them having some sour moments, but either way, Glinda's worry sparks James voicing his opinion regarding Ozpin's actions. Again, he mentions he's trusted him for ages, but he's not fond of the passive approach that he feels Ozpin is taking, and thus leaving the General and others in the dark. Glinda brushes that aside while praising him for the work that he's been credited to in aiding the people, even with those against how he goes at it, and that for the times that he's talked about trust in the past, he needs to back up those words with some of his own shown to Ozpin. Side note before we move on though, I'm calling the Ironwood's arm as either a prosthetic, or it's even his weapon. And yes, maybe it's also a gun too to keep up with the norm. Dashing back to Mountain Glen, we see RWBY is still on watch, and the rest of her team are still mulling over Oobleck asking why they wanted to be a huntress, giving them a chance to expand on their answers. Weiss has a big bit of growth here, as she mentions she's very aware of her father's shady actions with the Dust Company, and it's this which is the cause for her name playing into why she wanted to be a huntress. She wants to reform that stained name of hers into something great, and she couldn't do that as she took a desk job in Atlas, but she believes that she can by aiding the people as a huntress, and in her part with a rather smart line of, "My father was not the start of our name, and I refuse to let him be the end of it." To Blake, at last she mentions for the first time in the show her old partner, Adam, who she refers to as her mentor. She was told by Adam that what they were doing was right, and would make the world better, but what sparked her leaving him was what this idea of a better world was, and it's something that she couldn't agree with. As to why of all things she went for trying to be a huntress instead of something else, this is because of the respect that huntsmen and huntresses have throughout the world, and by being one, she could fight for good and try to break the wrongs of the world, especially because of the fact that she's a faunist. Yet she still doesn't know the exact steps to do this, and she fears carrying that stigma of the world's hatred on her for her kind, when trying to erase it. Yang tries to comfort her, saying that she's someone who's never backed down, but, as Blake replies, she doesn't think that's true. She's often ran away from her fears, such as when her friends found out that she was a faunist, when she left Adam, and she even feels that her semblance is an example of that too, with how she leaves behind a copy of herself to take the blow while she avoids it. The semblances are really starting to turn into representations of their users. Just look at Ruby's speed and Jean's seemingly defensive powers. Even with that though, Yang points out the other two at least have a drive compared to her. Yes, we know she has the part of her wanting to find Summer Rose and what happened in regards to her, but regards to being a huntress, she doesn't have a goal to push her forward like they do. She said last episode that she loves the thrill and wants to have adventures, and that helping people is an added bonus if she does so along the way. She honestly has kind of the most selfish reason to be a huntress, even though she's not against aiding others and saving lives. Yet compared to RWBY, who didn't get the question last episode yet, we kind of already know what her reason is, as someone who wants to make the world better and help people like the heroes that she loves reading about. Compared to her, Yang is very aware that she might need to mature in regards to a new profession. Even though Weiss mentions RWBY is still a kid compared to them, the others point out that they are virtually the same even if they are slightly older. Not to mention they're in the middle of a freaking war zone packing weapons. The discussion ends for now at least, with Weiss reminding them the key point in this. Their duty and their main priority as huntresses are the people that they must protect, which seems to please an eavesdropping Oobleck for now. So yeah, only one episode since this development started to brew, and we already got what seems to be the girls coming to the conclusion they needed in another strong emotional moment of the volume. It's great that we are at last starting to have the gang, minus RWBY, see the passion they have is a part of them, but shouldn't be the only engine behind what they now do. On top of the fact, we got some more detail into the kind of people they all are, and we've got the first insight into who Adam is, which no doubt pleased many wanting something about him since the Black trailer. So, what's the best scene to follow up from that? How about Zwei dragging RWBY away and finding him taking a whiz? Charming! Though that luck of the heroes that happened in the past at least, plays into effect here, as through the Corgi, we find wandering White Fang units. Yep, turns out that the White Fang are indeed in Mountain Glen, and RWBY tracks them along with Zwei to their base, and then heads back to grab the others. Or at least attempts to, as RWBY gets dunked into a crumbling hole, leaving Zwei to call for help. After a rather rough landing, we see RWBY's discovery, an underground section of the city, and sadly, the two guards from before. I say sadly, because in falling, RWBY dropped Crescent Rose, and while she does try to put up a fight without it, after some rather stiff smacks and kicks, she's out for the count, cutting us to Yang and co discovering that RWBY's gone, with Zwei leading them back to the hole. I swear if the one bark means yes bit earlier isn't a sign that this is a very smart Corgi, I don't know what is. Back to RWBY getting dragged along by Specs here and his friend, we see that the White Fang have taken residence underground, and packing not just tons of dust, men, mechs, and even what looks to be a frickin' bomb, but also our favourite suited and booted baddie, Roman. Back up top, the others find the hole, sparking an epiphany for Oobleck to give his students a bit of a lesson. See, to aid into the connection of the Kingdom of Vale to Mountain Glen, the people made use of the caves underneath to attempt to form an underground subway system. But due to the increase of Grim attacks due to the city having no natural borders protecting them like the kingdoms do, they took refuge underground in these tunnels and hold themselves off from the upper level. Sadly, it turned out to be the biggest and most fatal mistake, as an explosion caused more of the caves to be connected to the underground settlement, and with it brought subterranean Grim, which gave the Kingdom of Vale no choice but to block up the tunnels, leaving the people inside to be attacked by the Grim, lest they use the tunnel to get into the kingdom. Jeez! This volume opened with a goddamn food fight, and now we have mass amounts of people being slaughtered and with no way out. This tone just got a lot grimmer than the beasts themselves. Somehow though, it now stands as the base for the White Fang, and where RWBY is now kept. So with the episode ending, the gang prepare for battle, Oobleck included, who reveals his flask is his freaking weapon. But for now, it's time for my positives and negatives for the episode. Say it with me now, there's not much to talk about negatives-wise. And honestly, that's still just a good thing. I think my only true issue is, strangely, with Oobleck's fast talking. In that last bit alone, I kind of felt that he was talking a little too quickly for me to register everything and get it all down what's being said. I know that's kind of the joke of it, and yeah, it's weird, I'm kind of criticizing something that I was enjoying and praising last week. I'm just saying it was something that took a rewatch to fully understand. You can call me nitpicky, but that's just how I feel, and to be fair, it's probably just me personally not being able to register that kind of speech to a T every time. Your mileage may vary. It's again the positives where a bulk of my notes are at. There's no action this time, and even the humor isn't as present as before. So what we got was more gold of development for Weiss, Blake, and Yang. And while they may not have hit the exact resolution just yet, we've got them understanding that their initial reason to be a huntress might not be the one they need for the job, just what drives them as a person. And it's growth that really does fit the three. Yang, often going with the flow and her actions being largely for her own benefit, now realizing she might need to be a bit more mature and think of others. Blake, realizing her past actions and her fears need to be conquered to help her strengthen taking a lot of hate while trying to stop it, and Weiss wanting to do good with the name that her father started to stain, as someone who's very proud and respect-minded. Though on the topic of Weiss and her family, with us seeing how Weiss feels about her dad's actions, what about Winter, her sister? Does Winter share the same opinion, or is she more on her father's side, or just indifferent altogether? It's a very insightful and compelling scene in this volume where a lot of its cast are starting to show more to them, and it's more steps towards making these three more human, yet also fit in young girls starting to live in a very adult-minded world. Also, the tension was strong here too, which no doubt has people biting their nails at the cliffhanger and hating the fact that we've got a week off for a World of Remnant episode next week. These small hints to what the White Fang are up to are definitely a buzz to think on until the next episode, no doubt leading to them activating that next step. And I think that their plan might be rather devious. I'm just saying, I think the fact that there's a bomb and the fact that this town is linked to Vale through the tunnels, on top of the timing of it all, is something to note. Also, we've got Oobleck's weapon, which, the moment I saw it, I flipped. So many people wondered if Coffee was linked to it in some way, or at least linked towards his fighting style, and now we know. Well, we know where it comes from, but as to what it exactly is, I'm guessing, at least from the shape of it, it's some form of lance, with maybe some sort of gun mode going off at that tip at the end of it. And side note, am I the only one thinking that the explosion that caused the Grimm to attack those underground might have been caused by either Oobleck or Ozpin? It's just when Oobleck describes what happened, I feel the way that he spoke about it felt like the tone of someone who was there, or someone who knows exactly what caused the explosion, and feels regretful. And as to why I think it might be Ozpin, well, we had Ironwood and Glinda talk about him in this particular episode where it's mentioned, and he and Glinda have both mentioned in the past that he's got some experiences that have shaped him for better or worse, himself saying that he's made more mistakes than anyone. So could Mountain Glen be one of them? Enough speculation though, as I give out my voice acting praise for the week. And call it cheap or the easy way out, but I can't decide between Kara, Barbara, and Aaron, so yeah, I'll give it to all three of them, as each of them pulled a very good emotional run here for such important developments of their characters. So it's a bit more of a setup episode than last week, but it's another solid one just like it. I was surprised that we opened with Glinda and Ironwood, but it also kind of turned out a stronger opening in terms of importance than last week's chat with the other good guys, and of course, the episode has many worry for our favourite red-hooded leader, and the fact that the actions of the White Fang look to be in full swing. As for what comes next, I get the feeling that if the timing of the releases of past World of Remnant episodes and what handy information they shared before it came into play are anything to go by, I reckon Grimm might be the topic, or perhaps more information regarding the White Fang. Either or, I would be very happy to see. So with 2 plot episodes to go before the volumes end, how do you think this episode went? What do you think Tortrick and Co are up to? And what do you think Oobleck's weapon is? Comment away down below, speculate to your heart's content, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.